My name is Hope Blaythorne. I live here in Salisbury, Pennsylvania, and I work in a unique capacity that I work remote from my house. And I am employed by a technology company that provides cloud technology to enable companies to have secure applications in the cloud. Customer success can be defined as making sure that customers achieve their business outcomes using the tools that they purchase from my company, which is called HashiCorp.
Where did you study?
University?
Yeah.
I went to Philadelphia College of Textiles and Science. It's funny because I actually chose the school because I wanted to go into fashion merchandising. So I did my first year. I enjoyed the textiles part of the education, and then I had the basics as well. But then I had the opportunity to do some internships. And I did an internship with a retail establishment that was called Nanduskin. That was down in Philadelphia. And that was kind of like the Barneys of Philadelphia. It had Chanel, it had all the high-end brands. So I went and I did that for a summer, and I actually didn't like it. So at that point, I turned on my heel and I came back to the guidance counselor at the university, and I said, I don't want a fashion merchandising degree. What do? I've got at that point I had 3 semesters. And she said, you know what are the other things that you're interested in? And we started going into that. And I said, marketing sounds fascinating. So I transferred into the business college, but I had so many credits from doing the other degree that I ended up with a double major of textile and marketing. And then I thought, maybe that'll be an interesting piece. Maybe I will go and move into marketing for, say, brands or whatnot, big brands. But then my friend from high school, she went to work for Xerox. And she was offered a job. She was a year ahead of me in university, and she was offered a job with Xerox. And she kept coming back saying, you would love this. You have the right degree for it. They give you 6 weeks training. It's phenomenal. I'm having a blast. And then in the next 5 years, I'll be making a good amount. And I feel as though there's a lot of job security here. So I went and I met a bunch of the people at Xerox. And then after I graduated, I interviewed with them. Never in a million years thinking that I would go into sales. And I did. I got the job, I went through all the training, and that was my first entree, if you would, into technology. That's an interesting question because my path was very different than the normal college student. And the reason why is that I ended up getting married very young, and I had my oldest daughter when I was 18. So I actually went back to college with my daughter. So she was my extracurricular activity, but even within that, I ran a cleaning business, and I utilized all the students as my helpers. They would clean houses for me all around the Philadelphia area. So, and that came out of an entrepreneur course that I took, where they said, you have to create a business, the least cost-effective business, give us a business plan. And I created a business plan of using students to have a cleaning company. And I called it Contemporary Cleaners. And I copied flyers and I put them in mailboxes in nice neighborhoods where I know people would want to clean and they're not really yucky houses. And I hired a bunch of students, and I, paid them cash so I didn't have to run a payroll. And that was my extracurricular activity that came out of that. I think I was determined, so I didn't feel as though it was mutually inclusive that if you had a child, you couldn't go to college, or, you had to pick either road, motherhood or that.
What is it like to have a home office?
It's funny because when you're in sales, I was fortunate that a lot of the companies I worked for, I might go in the office once or twice a week, but I was always out visiting clients. So I like that. I like being out. I feel like a caged animal if I have to go into an office. And as much as being a person that's been in sales, etc., I tend to be more of an extrovert. Being in an office all the time just to check a box and having to interface with people constantly is actually very draining, I found. I think if I was 100% working out of my house remote and going nowhere, when I have those weeks, which I will have, maybe a week or two where I go nowhere, I do get a little stir crazy. And thankfully, my husband works from home too. So I might see him at lunch, or, the kids will come home after school, I see them. So at least it's like humans, And I have my work dog that I talk to all day long too. But I do love going out and visiting customers. I love going out and team building and things like that. So yeah, it's a good balance. I would say always be curious. Customer success, because it's a post-sales, means that you've got to advocate for your customer. So know exactly what their needs are. You've got to really take a customer-first approach, which means maybe your company obviously wants to sell more products. Your company obviously wants to be generous to their shareholders. There's a lot of pieces that go on from what the company wants to do. However, I always believe that if you make your customers successful, you as a company will be successful too. So that's why I would recommend they always seek to understand and develop the soft skills such as having empathy, listening skills, etc., to know exactly what their customers are doing.
Oh, have you experienced any inequalities being a female in the professional world, especially in tech companies?
Unfortunately, I have to say my entire career, every step of the way, I've seen flavors of it in different ways, whether it's male sales reps getting better accounts, leads that would come in, we call them bluebirds. I seem to note that more males would get them, even down to a recognition. When I first started my first day at Oracle, which I worked off, I had to go up to Madison Avenue in New York City. I show up there all excited, and when I get up there to announce who I am to the receptionist, she goes, "Oh, well, whose secretary are you?" So that kind of peeved me, but it revealed that I was the first female on that all-male team selling applications. And all along the path, it was making team meetings later in the evening when, of course, they have wives at home that stay at home and watch their children. So I'd have to drive all the way to Long Island to go have a couple drinks with the guys for a happy hour. But that's when a lot of the talk would happen, and that's when, if you wanted to get more exposure into accounts or learn more about different aspects of the company, you kind of had to do that. And I had to drive 2.5 hours to make that happen. So it was little pieces like that you see that, some of that is coming away, but there's still bits of that still exist. I think, unfortunately, when I was coming up in my career, I saw a lot of women that didn't help other women. And pardon this, there's a special place in hell for them. Because I think you need to advocate for each other. You need to, don't feel as though it's another competitive women. I think what we saw in the early 2000s was that there was limited seats at the table for women, so women felt like they had to elbow one another to get that seat. My take is like, if I get one seat, I'm making 3. I'm making as many seats for women as possible. You know what I mean? And I think that's what we have to move towards, is like pulling each other up constantly. I think, where do I start? I think, one of my biggest beefs is that the same maternity leave that existed when I had my first daughter is still what's in place now. It's disgusting. And also, it's funny, if you go out on LinkedIn and you look at some women, especially women in their 40s, and you see all of a sudden, somewhere between like 26 and 35, there's a gap there because they go out and have a child. And they come back, and a lot of times it's really hard to come back at a higher level. I remember every time when I was in sales, when I took a maternity leave, I had to bankroll all of my vacation because I got 6 weeks, then I had to put on 2 weeks. And the reason I had to do that is if I left my job and I stayed out longer, I could have stayed out for, say, 3 months, but I could only come back to whatever role was available within the company. So I might not come back to my existing job. And that's why you see a lot of those gaps in women's history, if you would, their career path. And I don't think that's something that's fair. You know, a man doesn't have to do that. I'm seeing more companies offering paternity leave. That's a big plus, but it still doesn't address, A, paying women fairly. We're still at that. We're not a leader. I would think the U.S. should be a leader. B, I think we're doing a better job of getting more women to run for office. That also helps drive the policies that support women as well. We've been very poor in our country with that in the past. So I'm grateful when friends like my girlfriend Helen ran for office, you know, and I think that's another way of encouraging other women to do things as well. We also need more women CEOs. That's it?
Yeah.
Yay! Oh, that was fun.